So, Olivia, great to have you here. I read a social media post that you put out the other day talking about how sometimes you get called LUÜNA. And it just got me thinking that when you're the founder of the brand and you're the face of the brand, and those two become so inextricably linked that your name gets interchanged with the name of your company. How does that feel?
It didn't occur to me that there was anything wrong with that up until quite recently, honestly. And to this day, when that happens, I do not take it seriously, but it does represent something that I am actively trying to change at the moment. So for a long time, I fell into a trap that I think is very common for founders, especially first-time founders like myself. The trap of believing that your company is your purpose. And even as I say that out loud, I appreciate that the nuance of why that matters might not be that evident. You know, we all pour our blood, sweat and tears into our businesses. Yeah. So we're, I think, inclined to believe that our purpose and our business are one and the same. But for me, I've started to realize over the last year that I think there's two main negative consequences of that. The first is growing the business, and the fact that when you are so close to something, too close to something, it is nigh on impossible to stand back and make clear strategic decisions. And for me, we'll talk about this soon, but with the launch of our new initiative, Good Period, I look back at the last few years and I wonder whether being so married to LUÜNA as being my entire purpose meant that I tried to make changes within the parameters of LUÜNA that perhaps could have been under this new entity that we've eventually launched. And I wouldn't necessarily change anything, but I'm just glad, put it this way, that I've been able to, in the last year or so, be able to have that healthy distance from the company that I've built to make these important strategic decisions about the future. And the second negative consequence is a bit more personal. I have only even more recently been able to link the fact that I too deeply integrated my identity with my company to the fact that I have in recent years experienced at times very severe social anxiety. And this is something that people don't believe because they see me talking on stage or in podcasts. But nonetheless, over the last few years, and my partner who's in the audience will be able to attest to this, you know, just social occasions where I felt like I have to at every step represent LUÜNA rather than representing myself has created, I recognize now, that anxiety. So I've been going through a really, I feel, very exciting process over the last year, actually longer, year and a half, as we've started to put together the idea for Good Period, which we just launched a few months ago. And also reconnect with my identity outside of the company. And I just know already I'm seeing that my company and my mental health are all the better for it.
Yeah. It's such an interesting perspective. It really is, because everything that we see, everything that we read right now is about founder-led brands and putting yourself out there and being the face of your brand. And having watched your journey for a number of years, since I think you gave a talk here a few years ago, and we've had LUÜNA in this space since I think that pretty much the day we opened or shortly afterwards. But I've never heard anyone frame it that way, and I think it's a really interesting perspective that you can actually take it too far. But I love the sort of intentionality of sort of realizing that it wasn't serving you and maybe not serving the company.
Absolutely.
And then turning up as your sort of authentic self every day, rather than the person that you, I guess, thought you needed to be to represent LUÜNA.
That's exactly it. And of course, I'm not saying, your purpose as a founder and your business, they absolutely must intersect.
Yeah.
If they don't, there's only trouble ahead. But like I said earlier, they're not one and the same.
Yeah.
And that's been a really important realization for me.
A great point. So for people who don't know, what is LUÜNA in the good period? And why do you do what you do?
I, for the last 10 years, have dedicated my life to changing attitudes around menstruation and trying to create better ways for people to manage their menstrual health. To date, I feel there's sort of 3 main chapters to my work. The first chapter was the realization in around 2016 that the status quo around menstruation, the status quo that had me and my friends having negative experiences on a regular basis with nowhere to turn, no one to support us, the realization that was frankly absurd. I always talk about the fact that, when it comes to humanity's technological advancements or advancements in general, we've walked on the moon. At the time I was looking at this issue, Tinder had just launched. So, people were swiping for love from a device in their pockets. And yet an experience that 50% of the population go through on a regular basis and have done since the beginning of time is still so shrouded in shame and mystery. So chapter 1 was my eyes being open to the absurdity of that situation, and with no intention of starting a business, starting a community. So spending every waking moment outside of my full-time job at the time, hosting gatherings, sometimes for 5 people, sometimes for 50, and then 100 people to break the stigma around menstruation, which led me then to chapter 2, which was realizing through that community building that the traditional period care industry had played a very significant role in allowing those stigmas to persist. It had also been the root cause of the recurring yeast infections that I had experienced for a decade at that time. I had blamed my body for those infections rather than ever thinking to look at the ingredients of the products that I was using, which at the time weren't communicated on the box. It was even hard to find out what was in these products on a Google search. Still can be today, although regulations are changing. So chapter 2 was realizing the need for better products and the launch of LUÜNA in 2019, which was initially designed to be a purpose-driven consumer brand, making better products, better for our bodies, better for the planet, with quite a simple but I felt powerful give back model. And LUÜNA, as I'd mentioned, has been my everything for the last 6.5 years. The model has shifted as we've learned more about how best we can make impact in this space. Specifically, that it has been the increasing focus on B2B partnerships. So working with large corporations and schools and universities to make sure menstrual health is supported, which previously it had not been. Which leads me to chapter 3, which we're sort of in the midst of at the moment, which is the launch of Good Period. Good Period is a social initiative. It works in synergy with LUÜNA, but what it does is it will focus on those B2B partnerships. It will focus on the consultancy, the policy change that we're involved in, the community programs that we've designed and are rolling out now to provide support for underserved communities that will live under Good Period, allowing LUÜNA to focus on the sales of our brilliant, wonderful products and giving us an opportunity to really scale up the impact that we've seen through those corporate and B2B partnerships.
When you moved from personal challenges to community, am I right? You were in China?
I was in Shanghai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ask because, my assumption is that the taboo around women's menstruation is probably even greater there. So I'm just kind of curious about, because culturally I think it's very different in the East and the West. That's my assumption, and just sort of what I've sort of seen and heard around me. I'm curious about how the community sort of built up around it when it's such a taboo subject. Was it expats? Was it local? Was it a mix? How did that look? What did that look like?
So I was running the community with a local friend of mine at the time. So we were able to deliver our sessions in both English and Chinese to a wide audience of people, which I think really strengthened the community. You know, our events would always be people from such diverse backgrounds, sharing obviously different cultural experiences of menstruation, but ultimately all, no matter where we were from, struggling in some way. And so I always actually push back on the notion that some stigma is deeper in some places than other. Of course, it manifests in different ways around the world, but I think people are surprised to hear things like, no, I know people are surprised. People are pretty gobsmacked, in fact, when they learn that period poverty is so prevalent in London, for example. And the same goes for Hong Kong. So yes, stigma and the manifestations of it and the lack of support around menstruation definitely look different. But I think that there's no place that is modelling menstruation done well. And I think, you know, the perception of this issue being worse in some places means that people, I think, ignore the issues that are often right on their doorsteps. And that's where we are choosing to focus. It's really activating organizations in cities like Hong Kong, like in Singapore, and creating a blueprint whereby, at least at first, our model allows them to tackle the issues within their neighboring communities. Once that's done, we'll move further afield, but we really think it's urban period inequality in the cities that we currently operate in that actually gets neglected and overlooked.
So people are suffering, women are suffering in silence everywhere.
Everywhere. From the corporate workplace, you know, we've been working in that space now for 6.5 years. People are gritting their teeth in bathroom stalls before a meeting. People are sitting at their desk having leaked, waiting till the end of the day for people to leave the office before they call a friend to bring them a change of clothes or period products. We then have research by the Zubin Foundation a few years ago found that 1 in 3 women in Hong Kong have been unable to afford menstrual products. And of course, what that does is just deepen pre-existing inequalities. So when we talk about this idea of period inequality, we actually believe that almost every woman is experiencing this. For some, it's more persistent. For some, it's a little bit more temporary. But we are all faced with it. And we want to build a model to tackle that in each of these instances.
Going from community, and I guess realizing that this was a problem that wasn't just something you were dealing with, it was much wider than that. And hearing the stories, both practically but also in your head, how do you go from that to starting a business to sort of tackle the problem?
I employ a phrase by an entrepreneur I really admire called Daniel Flynn. He's the founder of an amazing social enterprise, Australian social enterprise. And he talks about his early years of ramping up to start the business with the phrase beautiful naivety. And that is just a perfect phrase to encapsulate those years for me. I had spent years building this community, and I was so fired up and ultimately angry and frustrated about the issue that I saw, and so convinced that the solution was right there in front of me. I was not fazed. I don't remember ever being fazed about the idea of putting all that into a pitch deck, taking it to investors, walking into boardrooms full of men in cities to convince them to work with me on the manufacturing side. All these big moments that could have or maybe should have felt daunting because I was so fired up by those years of work and such close proximity to the problem. Nothing felt like it was beyond my reach. Now, obviously, it wasn't very long before I realized that this was going to be quite tough. Got laughed out of my first investor meeting, literally laughed out. Got told by by the first manufacturer I left with that, of course, we were way too small and they don't work with startups. But none of that dissuaded me again. So it was tough. But I think that beautiful naivety, which I'll never have again.
Love that phrase.
I'll never have again.
Love that phrase.
Which is sad in some ways.
What was the name of the entrepreneur?
Daniel Flynn.
Daniel Flynn, okay.
Yeah, a real social entrepreneur hero of mine. Yeah, I think when you don't know how hard the road is ahead, it's nothing. There's nothing to stand in your way.
Yeah. The naivety part of this has come up so many times in these discussions because I think anything that anyone has ever built would probably never have happened if there wasn't a degree of naivety in the beginning and a degree of stubbornness that I'm going to do this and I can do this. And I love the fact also that the passion just drove you to jump over what would otherwise maybe have been seen as hurdles. Was there an aha moment where you're like, I'm going to do something about this that you can remember, or was it something that built more slowly?
I don't remember an aha moment. I think, no, I don't. It just felt so, one minute I was hosting community events. The next I was trying to raise investment.
Okay.
I don't remember there being this specific moment. It just happened so naturally over time.
Okay. And why the name LUÜNA?
The name LUÜNA and the way that it is designed in our logo is both, I think, a really poetic and strong commentary on our branding nounce, and also so deeply rooted in startup struggles. So originally it was LUÜNA.
Okay.
For anyone that knows LUÜNA, it's now LUU with an umlaut and an A.
Yeah.
LUÜNA is linked to the moon cycle and the idea that, like our menstrual cycle, the moon shifts and changes shape throughout the month whilst always remaining true to who it is, what it is. And we feel like that's the same for women and people with menstrual cycles. Our cycles, which are completely overlooked and still misunderstood to this day, when they are embraced, they allow us to change and shift. And sometimes that looks tough and sometimes it looks wonderful. But we want to get to a place where that is empowering, not negative as it so often is seen. But LUÜNA, yeah, we did the trademark search. I didn't have I think it was either 3,000 or 5,000 RMB to register. I didn't have it. And a year later, by the time I had it, LUÜNA had been swept up by, I don't think it was ever used. I was told it was just some big pharmaceutical company coming in and registering all these trademarks I've never seen out in the market. But I couldn't say goodbye to LUÜNA and the purpose behind it. And so the challenge then became, what letters can we add? What design elements can we add?
Yeah.
Hence the extra U in the umlaut.
The stories behind, honestly, everything that happens on an entrepreneurial journey are things that sometimes never get told. It's fascinating when you hear these stories, and you know the fact that you stuck with it and had to change it, but you still stuck with it. And in a funny kind of way, we had that here when we decided to call this banyan, and then everyone said, "Well, you're just going to be confused with banyan tree." But there was just very, very, very strong reasons for us to call this banyan, and we were like, "Well, okay, we'll get over it."
Yeah.
You know, but this actually spoke to us.
And you'll build your own identity and make it your own.
Yeah. Interesting. You talked about, not having any fear in terms of going out and securing investment or looking for investment. Was there anything in your background that gave you confidence, or was it just passion that was driving you?
I have always been very confident, I feel. I took on endeavors when I was younger that sometimes ruffled my parents' feathers a little bit, but I think would probably prove that I've gone after things that I'm passionate about from a young age. As I mentioned earlier, suffering a bit more from social anxiety over the last few years, it's felt tough to see that retreat slightly, quite honestly, something I'm building back towards. But no, I think I've always been very passionate. I think the confidence that I had in those early stages, I very quickly realized wasn't actually going to get me very far alone. When it comes to fundraising, I believe this is how the timeline went. I think I went to that first pitch. I was laughed out of the pitch. And then immediately I knew I wasn't going to get very far. I wasn't confident with my numbers. To this day, like, numbers are not my strong point. I have an amazing team who, live and breathe that stuff along with me. And I've had to learn over the years. Obviously, you've got to be good with your numbers as the CEO, but it's not something that always came naturally to me. So the first thing I did after being laughed out of that first pitch was went on to LinkedIn, and I really don't know what I searched because I really don't think I knew what I was doing, but probably typed in kind of just CFO or financial consultant, and set up coffees with a few people in Shanghai. And one of them, who is on my board of directors to this day, had never met her before. She was at the time the CFO of a very, very fast growing China based startup. And she loved the mission and she believed in me. And she said, I will help you raise your first round in exchange for a very, very small fee once you raise the money. And without her, I don't know that I would be sitting here, honestly. Maybe I would have found somebody else who could support me in that way. But I really do think that's like a needle in a haystack, trying to find the person like her who delivers, who you trust, just ticks every box. And so I'm very grateful for her. And I think that's a good example of, passion and confidence are so crucial. But of course, we know, you can't do it alone.
Yeah, but putting it out to the universe also, sometimes the universe just gives back, right? We would never have opened this space. We sat down, and I remember saying to my wife, Amy, that we needed a designer, we needed someone to run it for us. And then the just small matter of finding the real estate, because we had this crazy idea. And then we're sitting there 2 months later and we're like, oh my God, someone's offered us a space, even though we didn't ask for it. We found someone who can run it. And I was recruiting for another business of mine, and we were just talking to the recruiter, and she's like, I've got the perfect designer for you. And we met and just hit it off. And it's almost like at that point you're sitting there going, well, I have to do it because I said I needed these 3 things. I never thought they'd happen. And then they're here in front of us. And I just feel like sometimes putting these things out into the universe with a little bit of intent.
They're not going to happen if you don't. It's
so fascinating to me. So you met this lady and she helped you. I'm really curious though, what did securing investment look like? And when you go in with a mission that is really socially driven, and obviously your passion will come through, but what is the motivation and expectation of the people who actually ended up investing with you? Or in you, I should say.
The first investors I closed were angel investors in Shanghai, brilliant, wonderful people who had done incredibly in their own careers, all doing very different things, who actually wanted to support beyond financials as well, bring their specific expertise to the table. And I think that was a big driver for them, being able to contribute their own skills, having a bit of, at the time, free time to do so, What then happened is shortly after we launched, COVID hit, and nobody had any free time to contribute their expertise. And that doesn't mean I wasn't supported, but you remember everyone's businesses were on fire. And I went from feeling like I had this pool of resources and support to tap to not having that to the extent that I wanted. But nonetheless, those investors that was, part of their motivation. Of course, my investors want a financial return. And I think I didn't know the phrase social enterprise when I launched this. Okay. I didn't know the phrase impact investing when I launched this. And I am so passionate today about the idea that if we build towards a new paradigm of business, and that requires all of us, you can see both financial returns and true systemic impact. And for my investors, both of those things are important.
It's amazing to find the right people, isn't it?
I almost didn't, though.
Yeah.
And I've spoken about this before, but I really like to emphasize I was very close to making a very, very bad call a night away from signing the papers to somebody that I don't believe I would be sat here today with my business. So I can't say that I demonstrated an exceptional judge of character. I actually was quite blinded by desperately wanting to get the business that I'd ideated for so long by that stage off the ground. I was actually just very lucky. This person showed their true colours the night before the shareholders agreement was due to be signed. If they hadn't, it would have been, I think, a more insidious sort of dissolving of my morale and the business as well.
So that one engagement the night before, and you just felt it wasn't right and pull the plug?
Yeah, I mean, amazing. I was being screamed at for not giving a board seat at the final hour. And so, I think when you're being shouted at down the phone by somebody, that's not the way I choose to do business.
In hindsight, it's lucky that happened, though, and you didn't sign those papers.
I know so, yeah.
Sometimes, I wanted to ask you about sustainability, because I believe that sort of came in later in the journey for you. What did that look like? Because it's a big part of what you do now. Yeah,
it is. As you can tell from my story earlier, one of the main reasons for going from community to product development was more linked to my own health issues. The recurring yeast infections I was experiencing, the realization through building the community that I was far from alone in this instance, and coming to realize that actually for such a highly absorbent part of our bodies, it's incredibly important that we know what we're exposing them to every month. So health was a key driver. Today, I believe that health and sustainability are so deeply linked, but that wasn't my mindset at the time. And actually, our first product that we designed and spent money on designing was a organic cotton tampon with a plastic disposable applicator. And the process for bringing that to production was the best part of a year. But by the time we got closer to production, so going all in, putting down the payment for a really large first order, I had realized that I couldn't get behind bringing to market, marketing, and educating people about a product that would be so polluting. And I was fortunate that, yes, my investors were very supportive and believed, when I talked to them about the sustainability angle and the ethics behind the decision to go into full production, they could see that this was going to be a problem. But I also had a very strong business reason for not going into production of that product. People had started talking about, 6.5 years later, we know that many of these have fallen short, but there were a lot of talks and implementation of single-use plastic bans that were happening, both on the ground in Shanghai and globally. And I was able to, of course, bring that to the table as a reason we shouldn't be investing in this single-use plastic product. And then since then, we can't attest to being perfect. I never would. But being as sustainable as we can is absolutely top of the agenda for us. And like I said, health and sustainability are so deeply interlinked that it's not a trade-off.
Yeah. It's not an easy discussion to have, though, when you've put money down and you've got a timeline and you've got investors.
No.
That's not something that you look forward to a discussion like that, even though it feels right, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. But again, I think it would have been a really tricky discussion had I not had that really strong business case to back it up.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, amazing. It's like they're guiding principles, right? Or things that guide you that feel right and don't feel right, but are also right for the business. It's not just feeling. It's a little bit more than that. We talked about a little bit about women's health. We talked about sustainability. I think the third pillar, which we haven't really touched on, is sort of the equity piece, which I kind of see as this, and you can correct me, please do. But I kind of see as almost three pillars of what you're doing at the moment. What does the equity piece look like?
Menstrual equity, which is at the heart of what we do, is the notion that nobody should be disadvantaged by their period. Excuse me. Nobody should be disadvantaged by their period. And yet, as I touched upon earlier, almost everybody is, whether it's somebody not having products when they need them in the corporate workspace and missing work because they've had to run out and miss a meeting to get products, when in most workplaces there's always a granola bar or another free cup of coffee available. In lower income communities, that would look like, as I touched upon, somebody not being able to afford the products, any products in some cases, or even not being able to afford products that suit their body. Organic cotton products that don't cause you irritation are at a higher price point. Yet for many people, those are the products that they need to be comfortable every single month. And so for us, it's about creating access to products with that education, and education not just for women, but for people of all genders, because breaking the stigma of menstruation is as much a man's job as it is a woman. So we're really proud to deliver almost in every instance our education to people of all genders. I think that's been a really important part of how we've developed our offering over the years.
I love the example you gave. Free granola bar in the pantry. It's when you put it like that, it's so obvious and should be such an easy thing for companies to get behind, and it feels like it hasn't always been an easy thing for companies to get behind.
No, and to this day, we work with some of the world's leading corporations, lots of brilliant local organizations. I'm so proud of the footprint that we have, but it's still not at the scale where it should be in 2025. It really isn't. It's like you said, it's such a small thing. We've done a good job recently, and some of this hasn't even launched yet, but being able to put better data around the business case for what we do, which has been a long time in the making, but already we're starting to see conversations being easier in the first instance with that data behind us. But actually also we're sort of at a stage now where companies know they need to do this.
Yeah.
But we know economically it's not a great time. So it doesn't mean sales cycles necessarily get any shorter.
Yeah.
It just means there's more enthusiasm to get there eventually, which I suppose is a step in the right direction. But it still means it's tough for myself and my team.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I want to come back to that. We talked a little bit about you didn't know what a social enterprise was when you're starting. For people who don't know what a social enterprise is, because I think sometimes there's confusion when we talk about NGOs, social enterprise, for-profit businesses, and where those sort of intersect. What is a social enterprise for people who don't know?
The way I see social enterprise is it is a business that must generate profits, but it does so to solve a core social issue. And so those profits, for the most part, are reinvested back into that social mission. And of course, though, used to grow the business as well, to maintain financial stability and grow, because you need to increase the profits to increase the impact.
And I'm curious because I'm sure that when you're running a social enterprise, sometimes there's tension between profit and purpose. What does that look like for you on a daily basis? And have there been any really tough decisions that you've had to make where you've had to sacrifice one for the other? I
think I'm better at the purpose than I am the profit, which is why you need a strong team around you.
Yeah.
Because you cannot sacrifice the profit, because then you are just sacrificing.
You sacrifice everything at some point, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm better at purpose. But I think, what hasn't suffered, I think, is the impact over the years. But I feel like in Hong Kong, the conversation around social enterprise, although I think still quite in its infancy, I think in most pitches that we go into, we would have to explain what that is to the person that we're talking to. But I think because of things like ESG requirements, companies using their social good to advance their employer brand, all these different things, I feel like we have a stronger business case for the fact that we are a social enterprise. Specifically with what we do, we sell to kind of two stakeholders. You're kind of what we call our wellness embedders, which could be anyone from a people team to a C-suite individual. And then we also sell to facilities team. We have to get them on board. And we have amazing people working in facilities and corporate services who really believe in the mission. We also have a lot of people in those roles who, and I understand this, their number one KPI is not to spend money. And so I do want to caveat that, although I see the business case for social enterprise increasing, which I'm really excited about, in times of economic hardship, which I am told that we are in many times a week by people we pitch to. There are people that are important to get us over the line whose number one priority is just cutting costs. And I see that in some corporations, there's a huge chasm between what the company is saying on the outside and what's going on internally. And I would never have been able to see into this if I wasn't in this very specific role. I've got many friends and founders that I admire who are specifically also running social enterprises that have to work with B2B partners and get all of these different stakeholders on board. And it's really tough. It's really tough. We are always, being squeezed on margin. We always push back. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm getting better at saying, you know what, we're just not right for you then. If that's the price that you need, that doesn't work for us. I'm not fully there yet, but I'm getting to a stronger place.
I can feel the tension there between profit and purpose. It's right there, isn't it?
And I just wish, it's difficult. I think that's the most frustrating part sometimes of what I do is talking, having conversations and walking past a billboard by the exact same company that's telling me I'm going to go with a full plastic pad because it's marginally cheaper, and I'll walk past a billboard of that same company, proclaiming their sort of ESG goals and achievements. I don't resent it. I know that's how it works, but I think that's what I grapple with a lot.
It still feels disconnected and can be frustrating when you see that kind of stuff. From a purely business perspective, the B2B strategy that you took feels like pure genius when you're trying to break into a market that's dominated by some of the world's biggest brands. But it's pretty clear to me that your motivation wasn't the business, it was the purpose. And the purpose was to help the people or the ladies who were in those buildings working every day, so they could do what they needed to do every day and not sit there and suffer in silence. You talked about never being scared to walk into those boardrooms, but I'm just curious, what did that look like in terms of getting the meetings and then actually pitching? And what was the feedback you were getting? Was there some, I'm sure there's some went better than others, but I'm just curious on the reactions you were getting when you started this journey. And has that changed?
I hope so. Yeah, I didn't get a reply to my requests for a meeting for a very, very long time. And bear in mind, I was reaching out to people on LinkedIn. Again, I don't want to call it self-awareness, but so much confidence. I would slide into the inboxes of CEOs and I hadn't even launched the company. I was just a random person, 26 years old, sliding into the DMs of a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, asking them if they wanted to talk about periods over a coffee with me. Like, I am not surprised in 2018, no one replied. And it is so funny. One of these people is a very dear friend of mine now. I started getting replies over the years, and I kid you not, sometimes there's a message from me from even as early as 2017 that's gone
in the chat box.
That always feels good because the conversations are starting.
It's beautiful naivety.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we didn't get a very positive response even when we booked the first few meetings. I think the first one that I was really excited about was with the head of DEI for a big conglomerate in Hong Kong. And their response was just, why would we do this? What would we do for the men if we did this? And we still hear that to this day sometimes. That is a failure on my part, though. That was the question and that was the end of the pitch, and that conversation didn't go further. And I recognized that I was not very sophisticated in those initial meetings because I was so fired up and I believed that everyone would care as much as I care. And so, of course, all these years later, I've learned no one should care as much as you care. It's your job to make them care. Data is important to enable them to do that. Understand what it is that's like, what's their job? What have they got to, what problem are they solving in the organization, and be able to provide a solution that speaks to that. So I'm not surprised those first few pitches didn't go well. That's completely on me. But I do remember how it felt when we got our first client, which was not a small client. It was Morgan Stanley. And February 2020, we went and we installed LUÜNA dispensers in every washroom in their ICC building. And that felt incredible. I was on cloud nine. I remember it so clearly. And then COVID hit. And no one replied to me again for about 6 months. So.
It's amazing, the roller coaster, the journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
One thing that really jumps out at me from everything that you've said to this point is that you've been on a journey of growth right through it. And I think that's pretty incredible, actually. Because when you learn from rejection, one, you learn how to handle it, and you learn that it's just part of what you need to deal with every day, and you can't let it stop you. But two, you learn how to tackle it as well and go back next time, like you said, using data and making your argument in a different way. I think that's pretty amazing. From a personal perspective, I've got a team here who are 90% women in Hong Kong. In my offices in Taiwan and Vietnam, we're probably close to 70% women between the two offices. What do I need to know that I probably don't know intuitively, or that maybe my team's not comfortable communicating to me?
I wouldn't even start with what do you... Sorry. Should I start again?
Yeah, go.
I wouldn't even start with what do you not know. I would start with what does everybody not know. And you only have to read reports like it's been done 2 consecutive years. Both of them are very good. The McKinsey Gender Health Gap report to understand that very few people understand how important the menstrual cycle is. Very few people, including the majority of people with menstrual cycles, know what a normal menstrual cycle looks like, what to look out for, that chronic pain is not normal and should not be accepted and should be supported by a medical professional. And if that medical professional, like often they do, tells you, oh, that's just bad periods, to go and get a second or a third opinion until someone takes you seriously. So I don't think it's what does any one person not know. I think I know there is an enormous gender health gap, and education for every single person is a really important first step. And that's what we say to our partners, the corporates or the schools that we work with. If you're not ready for products, that's fine. Let us at least host a session, do some, anonymous sharing for your employees and see what's coming up. And through that, every organization is able to see whether it's being unable to talk about the symptoms you're struggling with, not having a good doctor who's taking you seriously in your personal life. In the case of male allies, just feeling really uncomfortable and unable to support your team as you would like to, as you often do with your other physical or mental health topics. So I think the first step is company-wide, team-wide education to get everybody on the same page.
It's interesting because I remember reading a post you did about someone who went to speak to a boss. It was pretty recently, I think a week or 2 ago, and was basically told that they shouldn't be bringing this up in the office. I guess that provides more motivation for you, but also it must be hugely frustrating and upsetting to hear those stories. What do you say to corporates who approach things that way?
I try first. I get frustrated, don't get me wrong. But I do try or employ empathy as the first lens that I would look at those reactions through. This is just one example. Myself and other community members who've gone to bosses who are women who have not had a very positive or supportive reaction. In many cases, it's very obvious that they have worked their way up in a very male-dominated, possibly quite toxic corporate environment in which it would be potentially even dangerous to then, as soon as you reach a position of leadership, use your voice to talk about these issues. I really do appreciate that. And it makes me all the more appreciative of those women leaders in particular in large corporations who use their voice to advocate for these issues. But I completely understand, in a way I didn't at first, why women and people who themselves have menstrual cycles and would benefit from these changes personally would not necessarily feel supportive of them for those reasons. And so I think that's a really important lens to look through first. There are other reactions that you realize are quite difficult to be empathetic about. But for the most part, there is a good reason why somebody might not be supportive.
When you do talk a company around, or when you get a win, like with Morgan Stanley, are you good at celebrating them? Or do you just move on to the next one?
I don't know that I'm good at celebrating them, honestly. I'm so proud of what we've done.
Yeah.
So proud. And I am very excited about the next chapter because it feels like things are really falling into place. But it does feel most days like we're moving too slowly. And when you have such close proximity to your community like I do, And for the last few weekends, we've been doing events with different communities, and we can't even meet the demand for what they need right now. And that's very frustrating. And so I would hope that my team might say we have a positive environment where we do celebrate our wins. I know that's true, but personally, I don't sit there probably absorbing them as much as I need to, because it always just feels like there's just too much to be done.
It really resonates with me in many ways, and I'm not running a business with the same sort of purpose that you have with LUÜNA and Good Period, but as soon as we have a success, I'm thinking about what we have to do next to keep the momentum going, and you know, it's like the next thing has to happen now, because that's ticked off. We move forward. So it really resonates with me, but I think that's why you've been successful in doing what you're doing and creating the impact. And I do want to talk about the impact a little bit, because I don't think we've spent enough time talking about what you do for marginalized communities and what that looks like, both the problem, but also how LUÜNA is tackling that. Maybe you could speak a little bit to that.
As I said earlier, when I launched LUÜNA, I'd never heard of impact investing. And I look back and I know that we had a very simple give back model. And that has changed over the years as we've learned what works better for the communities that we serve. Also, as we've responded to crises like COVID, for example. But another reason that we want to launch Good Period is having learnt more through collaborations with community leaders, so individuals from the communities that we serve, which is really important to us, our charity partners, also me being privileged enough to go through a number of very transformative social entrepreneurship programs over the years. I've learnt, we've transformed our approach to those communities and how we work with them. And Good Period is now the organization that we will take all of those learnings from the last 6.5 years and apply to the programs that we're building. So we have been building recently our first ambassador program. This one is with 8 amazing women from the overseas worker community in Hong Kong. They're all named on my recent LinkedIn newsletter, so do go and check them out. They're incredible. They are people who have attended our pilot programs over the last 18 months, received menstrual cups, received reusable underwear, received education, can speak to how truly game-changing that has been for them, and have wanted to co-create an ambassador program to take that to their community, which, as you know, is thousands and thousands of individuals in Hong Kong alone. And the benefits of that range from financial benefits, you know, not having to spend money on period products for the next few years, environmental benefits, people being able to adopt and choose products that align with their environmental values, and health as well, not having to choose the crappy, fully plastic pads that cause so many people irritations. And that particular program, although I know for a fact we'll continue refining it, it's not to say it's perfect, but I really feel like we finally got the blueprint that will move the needle on period inequality. And we now just need to fuel it. We need to fuel it by increasing the money that we make and the profits that we can apply to that particular program. But I'm so excited about that. And where Good Period feels a bit different, I would say, from LUÜNA is that we are just so much more embedded in the work that we do. We will still continue to deliver products to charities that need it for them to distribute, but we are building this and we are deep in the programs and the outcomes. And that feels really, really important to us. And these people are our customers, just like any other customer. It's not, over the years, you know, I've spoken to more investors than you would imagine that say, you know what, why don't you just sell your organic cotton products to the people that can afford it and create like a low cost plastic product that you give away to increase your margin, you know, feedback like that, which is just wild to me because that stands for literally against everything that we exist for.
Yeah.
This is about creating, giving the same events, the same education, the same product access, obviously tailoring it to different communities and different audiences through that idea of co-creation, but giving everybody access to the same care and the same joy. Like, we are all about joy. It has to be joy for the team. It has to be joy for me. I probably need to have a bit more joy sometimes. But joy, delivering that same joy and care to every single person is at the heart of Good Period.
Well, I mean, you're doing incredible things, and I think that with those incredible things has come some amazing recognition that you've had that's massively well deserved. What does that feel like for you when you get that recognition? So you've had the Cartier Women's Initiative Award, you've been Forbes 30 Under 30, you've had the EY Entrepreneurial Women's Award. How do you receive that, and what does that mean for you and the team, and also for the business?
Those accolades definitely give credibility. It's funny, in my school talks, I start with a slide of me looking put together, let's say, with the logos of those different accolades. But then I quickly flip to the next slide, which is a photo of me looking disheveled, crying, a screenshot from a text I sent to my mum during COVID where I thought the business was going to fold, pictures of me surrounded by boxes, packing, you know, like the average non-glamorous stuff that happens every day. Not the folding of the business, obviously. But, you know, the low moments, the everyday stuff that doesn't make it to the magazines. And I think that highlights how I feel about those accolades. They are important. I start with them just so everybody sort of feels, okay, this person knows what they're talking about, but then quickly flip to the reality, because I have no interest in promoting a glossy view of entrepreneurship or life in general.
Yeah.
I think it's really destructive. You see that a lot on social media. I probably don't do a good enough job at it. I do need to be a bit more intentional about, strategically sharing more of the realities, I think. I think when you're in those low moments, you don't have the energy to put them out there, but they're important.
But you do. You wear your heart on your sleeve, Olivia, and I've read some of your posts, and, you know, I think... Does that come naturally to you to put it out there? Because I think I see from you someone who really does, and I'm sure none of us see, or none of us show everything, right? There's a lot of things we don't show, and for good reason. But you do put your heart on your sleeve. I've read your social media. I've seen your LinkedIn. I've seen you talking about coming back after a bad day and your landlady lifting you up and stuff. And, you know, but does that come naturally, or does it help when you put it out there?
It comes naturally, and it is both the reason for my most important relationships. The reason I connect so well with someone like you, you know, the conversations we've had in the past, these things are important benefits of being open. It's also bitten me in the arse quite a lot. Not every space is a safe space to be vulnerable. Yep. I've been vulnerable about my business challenges in certain environments that I've then realized we sort of used as kind of gossip fodder and blown out of proportion. And, you know, that gets back to you and you just realize sometimes say less, you know, make sure you're in a space with people, make sure it's a safe space. You don't have to share everything. I think it's important to me to talk about the raw, gritty realities of building the business, but also I have learned over time that that can be used against you as well. And so it is a delicate balance, to be honest.
I love that you do it, because I think that entrepreneurship, running a business, selling a business, all of these things can be so glamorized. And you only see the shiny side of it in most social media posts, marketing, etc. And I think that there's another side of it that people just do not see. And I think the more that you can shine a light on that, the more you actually help other people going through the same challenges to say it's not just me, because every entrepreneur has been through it. Everyone's woken up in the morning and thought, how am I going to pay the salaries? And you just don't hear enough of it. I really believe that. I think it's a super helpful thing for people who want to go down this path, but also people who are on it, because it's like, we're all in this together.
Absolutely. And I don't think we're going to build. It's really important for many reasons. It's very important in solving some of the very critical issues of our time that we build the next generation of social entrepreneurs. And we must share, or they must be aware that this is not social entrepreneurship solving these issues, building something that lasts and matters in most cases is not going to be a hockey stick curve of growth.
Absolutely.
Like the podcasts will have you believe.
Yep.
But it is a long game. It's a hard game. I actually say, look at your business plan, double the amount of time you've put in there to achieve your goals, and ask yourself if you have the grit and the passion to do it.
Absolutely.
For double the time.
I actually told someone 3 times the time. Just the other day on the phone.
That's probably more
I was
accurate.
speaking to someone. I said, whatever you thought it's going to take, it's going to take 3 times
I would
this.
agree with that.
So fascinating. If we're sitting here in 5 years, so in 2030, what would you hope to share with us that you'd have achieved?
I would like to say that every workplace in Hong Kong is a good period partner, so is supporting menstrual health for their employees through our programs. That will allow us to serve hundreds of thousands of individuals that need our programs in the community. And I would hope by then that this blueprint would have been refined and rolled out in other cities, in other markets, having the same positive outcomes in those cities as well.
I love that. I think what you've done is hugely inspirational. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts or not?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Is there an inspirational one you've listened to recently that you can recommend?
Yeah. I really love the Disruptors for Good podcast by Cause Artist. Many brilliant episodes. The one I listened to recently which was actually released in April of this year, was with the founder of Leapfrog Investments. So the sort of, I think, OG of impact investing, and it's just amazing to talk or hear somebody like him speak about the belief that the world's capital markets can be unlocked for good.
For good, yeah.
And that gave me a lot of motivation that, people working on enormous scales have that mindset and are working to shift that paradigm of business that I believe in, that new paradigm.
I mean, that's a podcast I haven't listened to, so I'll have to look into that one. And last question from me before we throw it open to the audience. Hong Kong, what's it like being an entrepreneur in this city? What do you love about it and what drives you mad?
Hong Kong is home. I love that there is a close proximity to each other, and I think that means that conversations and change can spread really quickly when done well. I love that for my mental health. I can leave a meeting and be on a trail in 30 minutes. So many people that don't live in Hong Kong don't appreciate that that's possible. It's the magic of this city. And I would say, in terms of things that drive me mad, I wouldn't say mad, but a really, really important change that I made earlier this year was moving out to the countryside, as it were. And maybe it wasn't the fact that I was no longer in the city. I think it was just potentially also just a change of location. But I probably waited a bit too long to do that. And that's been really critical for having a healthier mindset and a healthier routine, which, as we know, is fundamental if you're running a company. It's so
good for your mental health. Yeah. It's also, I heard a quote the other day of don't optimize, was it happiness? I think it optimize for energy. And I think that some of those decisions can actually just really help give you more energy every day when you pull yourself away from the city and you get out into nature. And home is different from work. It's all not one. It's not all in the same bubble, so to speak. Yeah. You know,
agreed. And I will say, and I have to say this because my partner's in the audience, I know I do still have some bad habits. I do have to sort of be pried away from my laptop sometimes.
Let's not go down that road with my partner in the audience too.
So let's not pretend we've got the balance down.
I agree.
But getting better, recognizing that these small changes do help.
I did hear you were plugging your laptop in on your into the car on your honeymoon.
Right, well, I've been really thrown under the bus there. The honeymoon laptop action, that was not the best.
Let's throw it open for any audience Q&A. We've got a mic. If anyone does have a question, please feel free to ask.
I was really struck by what you said about female leaders almost being as challenging as male leaders when it came to like period products and you know, managing women in the workplace in that way and helping them. I know that you said you've done a lot of work with schools, and my own kids have said that they know who you are when I said I was coming here this evening. I was wondering if you've noticed a change in this younger generation. Are they more open? Is there less stigma? And are you optimistic that through them, things will get better over the next decade or two?
The work we do with schools is some of the work I find most motivating. In every school collaboration we've had, there is almost always equal male students and female students working side by side to spearhead these period equity initiatives. So much so that we had different groups from different Hong Kong schools speak at a corporate event we did. This was a couple of years ago, actually. But the audience, more than a few people, were moved to tears at seeing boys standing alongside girls and knowing that for almost, I think everyone, no matter where they grew up, that would have been unheard of a few decades ago. So that is an incredibly important shift for sure. I will also say sometimes I recognize that I live in a bit of an echo chamber, and that I'm reminded when I go from smaller group work to wider school-wide assemblies. And of course, you see the nudging, the giggling, the awkwardness, that there is still a lot of work to be done. It's not like everybody is chilled about this topic and wanting to support their peers in the same way. So in short, very optimistic. The students we get reached out to all the time, and we speak to so many students working on cool projects, social entrepreneurship products that have that amazing combination of business acumen and impact interwoven, which in particular makes me very excited about the future, because as I've talked about, I want to see this new approach, this different approach, to business become more mainstream. But nonetheless, education around periods definitely needs to be improved. A few years ago, a young girl, I think she was about 14 by this time, told me that she had started her period 2 years before and had thought she was dying. She did not know what it was. And people are very shocked to hear stories like that about Hong Kong. But it shows how much harder we need to work to make sure the education is improved.
Somebody's listening to this podcast and wants to get involved. How can they do that?
Great question.
Really great question. So 2 ways. Please head to our Good Period website, check out our business page. And if you work at a company or an institution that doesn't yet support menstruation, or if you've got plastic heavy products sitting in your washrooms and want to change those, get in touch. Just, we'll do a 15-minute intro call with the team and we'll tell you why it's important that you work with us and the value we can bring to you and your organization. Set you up with an amazing email that you can send to decision makers within a few days to get the conversation started. But also, I would say, do go and follow us on LinkedIn or Instagram. We've got something really exciting in the works that is going to allow individuals outside of the workplace to be more involved in our work. So can't say much more on that right now, but yeah, give us a follow and stay tuned for when we make that announcement.
Brilliant.
So I just wanted to ask, what's your ultimate goal in your life? Because I think so, like, I don't know, you're currently like in your 30s or something. So like once like you will turn like 60 or 70, how would you see yourself to be? Like, are you going to run LUÜNA for like that time for your whole life, or are you going to like pivot to something else or like do something else in your life?
What an amazing question. Wow. I haven't thought about 60 yet, but I want to give this some thought. I would absolutely, it's very important to me that what we're building still exists when I'm 60. And it's very important that it exists without any input from me. I would love to be involved. I would love to be sitting on the board of the company, being a steward of the company, supporting the team that is running it by that stage. Absolutely. I want menstrual equity is my life's purpose. It really is. And as I've touched upon, but I realize that doesn't have to be LUÜNA. Maybe by the time I'm 60, it wouldn't even be a Good Period. Maybe this company has evolved and changed shape into something completely different to serve that goal. But being involved in this particular topic until the issue no longer exists is something I hope I'm doing forever.
I think that's a great it's a great example of why purpose, or why it's a kind of a social enterprise. Because in what you just said, you've kind of encapsulated the whole idea of a social enterprise. It's there. It needs to make money, but its primary goal is actually to solve a problem. And that once the problem's solved, then it's kind of done its job and you can move on to the next thing. And that might be something else that the company focuses on. I love that we ended it like that. Olivia, thank you so much for being so open, being so transparent. I think it was less than a month ago that we talked about doing this podcast. And I've really enjoyed getting to know you over that period. I feel like I've gotten to know you much better. Certainly know the story of LUÜNA and your story much better. And just super impressed with everything you're doing and the way that you do it with intentionality and doing what's right all the time is it's inspiring.
Thank you.
It's inspiring. So yeah, thank you for being here, and we'll enjoy some Maison Julia and some cheese and crackers.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.